Hey friends, how's it going? Ash here, welcome back to Gents. Hope that you're doing well. It's time once again to take a look at Yves Saint Laurent's Y Elixir. Now I did a first impressions on this fragrance, a first impressions video. If you haven't seen that, feel free to check it out where you can see my initial thought process on this release, which, spoiler alert, not super positive. But time has passed and now it's time to take a look once again at this fragrance and see if things have changed at all. I probably don't need to tell any of you this, but Yves Saint Laurent Y is one of the biggest men's fragrance lines in the world, one of the top selling, most popular lines that you can possibly get. For a good reason. The fragrances across the line have great versatility, they're huge compliment pullers, very easy to wear, and they're done with a nice dash of sweetness that appeals to a lot of people. Put that together behind a name like Yves Saint Laurent and you have a hit on your hands. So when Y Elixir was announced, people by and large were hyped, including myself. I thought this was gonna be a surefire hit. But as I said, time has passed, so it's time to talk about this one once again and see if my opinion has changed at all. I'll have this fragrance linked in the description below. Feel free to check it down there. And before we take a look at the presentation, here are some codes that you can use to save money across a bunch of different websites. So we've got codes for 10% or more off from Fragflex, from the Perfume Box, from Max Aroma, from Twisted Lily, from Triple Traders, and more. All right, guys, let's get this kicked off by taking a look at the presentation, and then we can do a deep dive into the fragrance. Here we have the front of the box. You have the name of the house, name of the fragrance, size, and concentration. Little YSL monogram on top of the box. QR code on one side, yslbeauty.com on the other. Bunch of information on the back of the box. Then on the bottom, you have your batch code, 38X903V. And here we have the bottle. I like the look of the bottle. I like the color scheme change. I like the little black YSL emblem there across the front. I think it looks good. I think it looks slick. Has kind of a reflective look to it, but if you hold it up to a light, you can easily see through and see how much fragrance you have left. On the bottom, you have a sticker that has your batch code, and you have your little YSL on top of the cap as well. And the cap clicks into place on this one very snugly. Let's go ahead and share a couple sprays. Here we go. Yeah, the atomizer on this, not great. One of the things I brought up with this actually in the first impressions is that they changed up the atomizer and it just feels to me lower quality. So again, I'll do a couple sprays. Yeah, I don't know how well it comes across on camera, but it has a definite different feel to the atomizer itself, and the amount of fragrance that it sprays out is not so great either. At the end of the day, not a huge deal, but it is a little change that they've made here. All right, let's start talking Y Elixir. Maybe we start just by talking elixirs really quickly in general. So at this point, the elixir flanker is the hot new thing. In the past, it's been a bunch of different things. It's been oud fragrances at one point. Every designer house had to have an oud fragrance. Then it was blue fragrances. Every designer house had to have blue fragrances. Right now, we are in the elixir trend, which is where every single fragrance house is seeming to want to put out an elixir version of their fragrances. Now, not every fragrance house has jumped in yet. Like Versace doesn't have any elixirs just yet, for example. Armani doesn't have any elixirs just yet, but I figure they probably will. So it's like we're Jerry Seinfeld now. What's the deal with elixirs? For the most part, it seems that the elixir version of whichever line we're talking about is supposed to be their halo fragrance in that line, which is to say the highest quality of that line, a lot of times the best performance of that line, though that doesn't always coincide. But the expectation is that the ingredient quality is going to be higher, that the fragrance is potentially going to take more risks, do something that's maybe a little bit more out of the ordinary, and just overall be an elevated fragrance experience over the other fragrances in the line. That's the expectation that people have now when an elixir is announced. So Y Elixir gets announced. It has oud as one of the notes in the fragrance, and everybody goes, man, this is gonna be a really, really potent fragrance. It's gonna have a lot of push to it. It's going to have great quality, because they really harped on the quality of this in the write-up for it when it was announced, the brand. And it's gonna be something that elevates blue fragrances. That was the expectation. So with that all out of the way, that all set up about elixirs, what they mean, when this was announced, all that stuff, how does this smell? In the opening, it has a little bit of a fruity sort of sweetness to it, though they did dumb down the note breakdown for this one quite a bit. Only 4 notes in the note breakdown. That note breakdown being lavender in the top, geranium in the mid, frankincense and oud in the base. So again, very simple. So that's your note breakdown. In the opening, as I said, a little bit of a fruity sweetness comes across kind of like apple, which would tie it in with some of the earlier YSL Y releases, though officially it's not a note. And then you have lavender in there also. It has that almost clean, fresh, clean clothing with a sweet touch to it feel that Y Eau de Parfum, Y Eau de Toilette have. Right in that vein, right in that style, tying it in with some of the earlier Ys. This one is a little bit deeper, not as heavy on the sweetness when you compare it to something like Y Eau de Parfum. And I preface this by saying I'm a big fan of Y pretty much all the way across the board, but I think it smells good. In the opening, it smells pleasant, it smells nice. It's not at all something that I smell and I'm disgusted by or anything like that. It smells fine, but there are a lot of issues here that we'll get into in a second that make it where smelling fine is not really good enough. So anyway, that's how it opens. You have geranium in there in the mid, as I said before. It comes across a little more aromatic than Y Eau de Parfum does. Again, not as sweet as Y Eau de Parfum. And as you hit the dry down with the oud that's in there, honestly, to me, there's really none to be found. And I know some people will say, no, I get oud in here, I get oud in here for sure. What are people talking about? I got the oud? Nah, not for me. A woodiness, you can pick up a woodiness in there, but when you say that you're putting in oud as one of the focal points of the fragrance, and you make a point to say that you're using natural ingredients of the highest quality, which again is what Yves Saint Laurent said, then the expectation is that when there's oud in there in the note breakdown, and that's something that you've focused in on and you said, oh, high quality natural ingredients, you expect it. You expect to pick that up. You expect to actually be able to tell, oh, there's the oud and it smells great. Or even if you hate it, at least it's there, right? But here you get just kind of like a nondescript woodiness, which, just is not gonna do it for many people when you've advertised it this way, and then what you present is something a little bit different than that. So you get a lightly incensed woodiness as it dries down, with remnants from the other notes carrying over into the dry down. There are still a lot of problems here for me, and I'll try to go through them. Again, in the first impressions video, I was a little more, caught up in the moment of just like, what are you doing? And time has passed, so I'll try to be, not just taking shots to take shots here, but I'm gonna lay out the issues that I have. We'll start, I guess, with the price and just kind of meander through this together really quickly. At retail, it's $180 for a 60 ml size bottle. That's what I paid for this, before tax, before shipping. After that, it's gonna come out to over $200, depending on where you live and if you get free shipping and stuff like that, I guess. Now, from time to time, retail stores will have sales, and this has popped up at discounters, so you can get it for less than that. But right now, even at discounters, this is running about $145. So that's $145 for a 60 ml size bottle. Again, that's before any potential shipping fees or tax or anything like that. But even if we just say $145, okay, that still places this at a discounted price about $45 more than what you can get a 100 ml size bottle of Y Le Parfum for. And then if you look at discounters, you can find Y Eau de Parfum, a 100 ml size bottle, for under $100. Not a whole heck of a lot under 100, but still under 100. So that means for this one, you're paying a premium of anywhere between like $45 to $55 more over a 100 ml size bottle of YEDP or Y Le Parfum. So you're paying $45 to $55 more for 40 mils less. The issue here is not just the price. That's part of the issue, but that's not the whole issue. Suffice it to say, do I think it's worth it at $145? For most people, no. I think that you're better off with Y Le Parfum or Y Eau de Parfum, but let's keep going. What price I would tell people to pick it up for? Like, at what point does it become a buy where you don't feel bad about it anymore? I'd say it has to get down to like Y Eau de Parfum pricing. I think if this gets down to Y Eau de Parfum pricing, I would change my tune on a lot of things. 95 bucks, 100 bucks at discounters, that's probably where I would say. The issue is, again, that's for a 100 ml size. And when the 100 ml of this comes out, it's gonna retail for over 200. And then when it hits discounters, probably gonna be what? 170, 180, something like that. And at that price point, it's not worth it. So if there is a day that Y Elixir drops down to $9,500 at discounters, I will tell you, yes, pick it up. Another big issue that I have, which is something that I talked about and touched on for a moment there, Y Elixir is not really doing anything new. Look across the lineup of elixirs that have come out, okay? Gucci Guilty Elixir. Does that smell anything like Gucci Guilty? No, they did something different. Sauvage Elixir, they did something different. Boss Bottled Elixir, they did something different. Even the ones where they didn't do something drastically different, like Lamal Elixir or Invictus Victory Elixir, it's very clear that they took the building blocks of what they had, what was going on in that fragrance line at the time, and they ramped everything up. You can tell an increase in quality. You can tell like a tighter focus on what they're doing, and it improves the scent profile by and large for most people. And so when you're coming with an elixir, especially from a line this big, you have to come correct. Think about this for a second. Do you think that Chanel would come out with Bleu de Chanel Elixir, and then it would smell like a little tweaking of the Eau de Parfum version of Bleu de Chanel, where they were like, hey guys, we put oud in here, and then you go, where? I don't think Chanel would do that. So like Yves Saint Laurent just dropped the ball to me and so many people out there by dropping this fragrance at the price point that it's at, with the quality that it has, with the minimal changes that were done that actually didn't improve it, but for the majority of people, I would say, actually dropped it down a little bit. So that is another issue. And then there is the performance, which for me is not apocalyptically bad. The longevity is actually pretty good. It lasts a decent amount of time off my skin. But in terms of overall performance, Y Elixir, for me, and again, I don't know if this is just me or if this is like everybody, but it does not perform as well as Y Eau de Parfum or Y Le Parfum. Now, for some people, that's gonna be a positive, because they'll say, well, that's good because I want it to sit more subtly on my skin. I can use it for more formal occasions and not have it be super loud. And I think that is probably actually where this fragrance would shine the most, in situations where you want something that has that Y DNA, but is going to sit a little closer to the skin, but still have good staying power. So if you wanted it to be a more subtle, more sophisticated take on Y, that's really where this is best. And in terms of seasonality, since we're talking performance, it's a Y, you know, it is a Y. So you can use it about whenever you want, realistically. So I realized that I just kind of got into bagging on this one quite a bit, but I do want to reiterate something that I said earlier, and that is, it smells good. It does smell good. I think it smells very pleasant, and there are times when I've been wearing this where I've caught a whiff of it, you know, just going about my day, and I go, wow, that does smell great there for like just a second. It hits you and you go, that could be something, and then it settles in close to the skin again, and it ultimately just doesn't have that factor that made Y EDP or Le Parfum such a big deal, which is where you catch a whiff and you're like, oh, it's fantastic, and you catch another fantastic, another fantastic, and other people smell it and they think it's fantastic. This one slots in below those. It doesn't hit as hard as those. It doesn't capture attention as well as those. And when you're paying a premium, a pretty good premium, for the fragrance to overall be not quite as good as two other versions that have been out for years, what is the point, almost? From my point of view, they needed to come out with something that was more adventurous, something that was more interesting, something that if they were going to play very clearly off of the already set in stone Y-DNA, something that set it apart where it wasn't, oh, this is just kind of that with a couple tweaks that actually don't do it any good. They needed something to really pop. And instead this is kind of like, oh. But again, I like the smell. I'm a fan of the Y line as far as that DNA goes. So if you have that DNA in there, I'm probably gonna like it. But I would pick overall the Eau de Parfum over this one, Le Parfum over this one. If I was looking for just a compliment puller, sweet type of scent profile in the line for like spring, I'd go Y Live. If I was looking for an office fragrance, I'd go Y Eau de Toilette. And even Y Eau de Parfum Intense, I feel was maybe a little more interesting somehow. So it's just, yeah, it's a letdown, guys. It's a letdown, that's all. And I say all these things as somebody who actually really enjoys the way this smells, but it just didn't quite match up to the expectations, the anticipation that a lot of people, including myself, had for it. And overall, there are better ways to spend your money. If money is no object, no issue, if you have tons of money, then yeah, absolutely knock yourself out, pick it up. But for people, especially right now, who have to kind of, you know, really spend their money on things that it's gonna be worth spending money on, I think they just missed the mark. Thank you guys, stay safe out there, I'll see you tomorrow.